Time for another edition of the Wealthy Pilots Podcast with Scott Osborn. And tax planning, tax prep, what's the difference? Let's get into it.
We've got some turbulence up ahead. Reach out to the Pilots Planner.
Hey everybody, welcome into the podcast. Thanks for hanging out with Scott and I as we talk investing, finance, retirement, a little tax planning, a little tax prep conversation this week. Scott, what's going on, buddy? How are you?
What's up, Marc? Good to see you.
Good to see you, man. We're simpatico.
Finally repping together.
Hey,
look at us
nice.
go.
I like it.
Yes.
I like it. Well, let's dive into today's conversation, my friend. Tax prep, tax planning. Let's break down the differences a little bit, because for a lot of people, maybe they don't really understand there's a difference. Maybe they're not at that point in their life yet where they even think about the difference, right? I think most of us just think taxes and we think, April 15th, got to do the thing, whatever the case is. And that's tax planning, right? No, sorry, that's tax prep.
Tax prep, for sure.
Yeah.
And candidly, I think a lot of folks just think when they think of taxes, they think CPA. And when you
just TurboTax.
Yeah, if they're doing it on their own, for sure. I would say most of my folks do outsource it, I think, just because they're like, I'd rather fly than do a bunch of paperwork. And I know I've talked to a couple of guys that they're always procrastinating on getting the paperwork even turned in, let alone doing it. So most of my folks outsource that portion of it for sure to a CPA. But I do see it as a point of frustration when folks are kind of coming into the pipeline and we're meeting them for the first time, where they intuitively know that there's other things that they maybe could be doing or should be taking advantage of. And they know that the CPAs typically have 1,000 to 2,000 clients, and they just don't have time to dig into their personal situation. And that's not a criticism of the CPAs. Most CPAs' business model and fee structure is, super fair around, and their processes are built around that tax preparation side of the house.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's a great point, and I'll even, throw myself under the bus. I do this every day, and I still said it backwards, right? So it's easy enough for people to get confused. But, thinking about a CPA, their job is revisionist history, right? Their job is what happened this past year. How do I go through and do those things for you, right? Where I think when you're working with a financial professional who is also helping you with tax planning, you're trying to also be thinking about the tax implications of the future. Not all CPAs do that. Some that work on both sides of the house do. And again, this is not a knock on CPAs, because that's their job.
Correct. Yeah. And candidly, when you work with a really good professional CPA, they have good checklists that they're following and really tight processes on making sure that they're looking at all the forms, getting the forms correct, making sure that the client is submitting everything that they need. So a really good CPA is going to be like, hey, did you get a K1 this year? Or did you get a 1099 from this like you did last year? They're really good at kind of checklisting that out and following it around. They do, many of them will do some planning, typically for business owners or people they're doing bookkeeping for, or whatever the case is. And there's this huge vacuum for what I'll call high earning, which are most of our pilots are like that, high earning, sometimes dual income, sometimes not. Maybe they got a side hustle, maybe they don't. But high earning folks that maybe they're not, small, medium, large business owners, but they still have a gigantic tax bill, and they still, want to know, am I setting myself up for long-term tax efficiency while not sacrificing too much efficiency for the short term? And there's kind of just a body of work there that most people just never deal with. And when you get, paired up with, a team, I do some of the tax planning, and then we bring in the CPA that we work with and that our clients work with. He really works with us on the tax planning too. So, we're kind of setting the vision and the strategy, right, and the intent for the client. And then we're partnering with him on the tactics of it too. So again,
how is that implicating? How is it affecting it? Right.
Yeah. And how do we nail it for the year? We're always going to continuing education and keeping up on tax law and those kind of things. However, they're getting into the forms every day. They're getting into the code every day. That's just their jam. So you want to partner with the right team that's kind of got that strategy and that vision for you. And then the CPA who's coming in with the tactics, every fall really there should be a review happening with the CPA. And if not, that's okay. I mean, you're probably not paying for it. It's probably not like a value issue. It just might be something that is going undone in your plan that needs to be done. Yeah.
And I think, again, a lot of people don't even really think about that. They just think about the annual thing. I got to deal with the normal, April 15th deadline.
Right.
And we've been trained on that. So it's not a fault if you don't, but you want to work with a team, to your point, that is really focusing on, especially as you're nearing and getting closer to retirement, you want to be thinking about tax efficiency, because the smoother you can be, or the better you can be at tax efficiency, Scott. I mean, what's the old saying? The more you make, the more you keep, right? Or it's not what you make, it's what you keep.
Yeah. I mean, and the more you make, the more you should keep, but
right.
Our tax code isn't necessarily set up like that. So
right.
We got to do what we can, especially when you're in those couple top brackets. We got to do all we can. And, and we've sent it out before. My clients go through it every year. We'll put it in the show notes here too, but let's make sure we share the retirement planning tax checklist
for
that
sure.
we have. And really, that checklist, our pilots use checklists every day, which means either A, they're going to like it, or B, they're going to be like, not another one. I ain't looking at that.
I'm tired of it. Yeah.
So if you need help, let me know. But the checklist is really designed to just go through, the top 20 strategies that apply to folks like our pilots, and see what strategies make sense for them. Make sure that we're saving in the correct way. Make sure we're investing in the correct way. Make sure we're taking advantage of things like tax loss harvesting on our non-retirement accounts. Making sure we're partnering with a cash value life insurance specialist if that makes sense for your plan long term. Making sure we're getting things over into Roth, and leveraging all the spousal assets and income the right way, and side hustles the right way. There is so much that we can be doing that many times people aren't, because either they're too busy, they're not aware, they've just never been, educated and informed on it, or they're procrastinating, like, I'll get to that later. And as everybody knows who might listen to this, 5 years later can creep up on you like that, and you still haven't done anything. So procrastination, hands down, our worst version of like shutting ourselves down and not getting results.
Yeah, it's the procrastination is the thief of tomorrow.
That's right.
That's a great little saying. I love that one. It kind of helps you think about getting it done now. And on behalf of CPAs everywhere, I'm not one, but I just talk to enough of them, and they don't like it either. So the longer you take to give them this stuff, they're like, really, it's like, oh, I'm here. It's April 9th. Are you going to have this done for me by the 15th? They don't like that, right? So
well, and that's also, you're bringing up a good point there too, with why I think that team approach is really important. You want your planner and you want your tax preparer and CPA on the same page to know what are the strategies we're working on, and and really just to provide a better client experience where the documents are automatically getting over to the CPA, and we're not missing 1099s. We've seen people forget to send a 1099 in that had $30 some odd $1,000 worth of tax loss harvesting done on it, prior to them coming over to us.
That's a big deal.
And that's a huge miss in terms of the capital gains they had realized in other portions of their finances.
Yeah.
And so, there's things like that can really hurt people that, just by missing one document. So the level of detail required is pretty important.
Yeah. And I think starting to have the brain shift, I use this analogy all the time, Scott, that, when you get to 50, it's like Memorial Day. We all know Memorial Day is not summer, but we've treated it like the official kickoff to summer.
Right.
And I think when you get to 50, you start to think about a lot more things like, I'm not in retirement, but it's kind of the unofficial kickoff to retirement. I better start getting my ducks in a row, right?
Yep.
And I think this is one of them where we start to make that mind shift, at least we should be anyway. Okay, I got to stop thinking about taxation just on the what happened this past year. Let me pay my bill or get my check back and move the hell on. That's really not what we want to do. You really want to start being efficient for the future, because especially with tax rates more than likely possibly going up. There's a darn good chance of that. So
there is. And if Congress doesn't act, we know they're definitely going up in the next year and a half here. For one, and then for two, we really know that for most of our folks, if you're making between you and your spouse, let's say between $300,000 and $600,000. To pay a financial CPA who's doing tax planning and tax preparation, a couple grand a year, if they're not finding, 3, 4, 5, sometimes 10x of that fee on top of taking the risk off of you and putting it on them, then you got to find a new CPA.
Time to go shopping.
It's time to go shopping. And, the value is absolutely there most of the time. And again, getting that connected into that total network of a team around you, it should make a big difference over time.
Well, I mean, there you go. I mean, a lot of the pilots obviously certainly have teams, right? It's not just the pilot themselves taking care of the entire plane. So, right, it takes a
crew,
team to get it done. There's a crew, right? So if you need some help, reach out to Scott. This is the Wealthy Pilots Podcast. We're going to wrap it up here this week. But if you've got questions on how to deal with this or wanting to get involved and get yourself a team, a financial team supporting you, then reach out to him at thepilotsplanner.com. That's thepilotsplanner.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify or YouTube. Hit the little thumbs up and the notification bell so you catch new episodes. And that's going to do it this week. We'll see you next time here on the Wealthy Pilots Podcast. Thank you, my friend.
Cheers.
We'll see you later.
Is your 401k working as hard as you are? Let's find out at thepilotsplanner.com to get started with your free full thrust 401k toolkit. Come see what a good financial co-pilot can do to help make sure your retirement is ready to take flight. Visit us at thepilotsplanner.com. That's thepilotsplanner.com.
Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.